hear another story about men? Great, because I've got a lot. So, I went on a date with this guy, and in the course of about 10 minutes, he mentioned that he was in an a cappella club, like, 3 times, which I have no problem with, because, like, power to you. Like, Pentatonic's incredible. Pitch Perfect, wow. But then he started to hum, and I just, like, politely giggled, because what was I gonna do? I don't know. And then he started to hum louder, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, sorry, I just have a song stuck in my head. And I was like, oh, cool, could you maybe turn the volume down a little bit, because we're in, like, a restaurant, you know? And he's like, oh, yeah, sorry. And then a few minutes later, he just stands up, and he starts to sing, like, full volumes, like, walking around the table, serenading me across the table, and he's like, don't I sound amazing? And everybody's, like, looking at me, and I'm like, I don't know, I barely know this guy, please sit down. And, it wasn't good. He was bad. He was a terrible singer. And then I left.
Alright, this one time I was hooking up with this guy, and yes, I hook up with a fair few guys. I love men. Yeah. Back to my story time. I'm hooking up with this dude. I'm on top because I love to sort myself first. We get up to change position, and there is now a little skitty on the sheet. And you don't want to make stuff uncomfortable because he's still got to finish, and you're just thinking like, bro, but you don't say anything. You just wait till they go. Because like, you're an adult about these things now. You don't really want to embarrass people at this age. Like, do we?
So y'all really seem to love like my little story times of guys being creepy, and I have plenty, so here's another one. So at my old school, I would call all my female friends babe, just affectionate, it's whatever. This guy decided that he thought it would be funny to call me babe as well. From the very jump, I was having absolutely none of it. I was just like, Sarah, don't call me that. No, like being completely clear with my boundaries. He starts calling me babe in like October, and it goes on for a little while, and then it dies down because, you know, Christmas break, it's whatever, a whole bunch of kids getting distracted with other jokes. Then Valentine's Day rolls around. He decided to get down on one knee by my desk and ask me out. I'm not even kidding, 5 different times. Finally, the teacher's just like, okay, that's enough, like, stop. So I'm getting super flustered. I was super shy back then. I go to the bathroom. Whenever I come back, no. I completely forgot. My friend met me in the bathroom and was like, homegirl, they're doing some stuff. I know that you're not like wanting to be center of attention. Here, just warning you. Come back for part 2.
Okay, so for the story time of my boyfriend cheating on me with a 60-year-old man when I was 19 and he was 20, we had gone on this trip to Florida, and despite the disturbing events of the first night, we actually had a relatively good time. A bunch of crazy shit happened, but we had fun, and we went home, and he was immediately missing Florida. Red flag. For the purpose of the story, I need to give people names, so I'm gonna call my boyfriend Ryan and his friend Connor, okay? The friend that was in Florida is Connor. So about a month and a half into us being home, Ryan decides that he wants to actually literally move to Florida. And he tells me he's going to do it, hell or high water. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because we had actually been in a pretty long-term relationship, and I was honestly annoyed that he was just like, I'm fucking up and moving to Florida without even fucking talking to me about it. Especially because our relationship had been so insane, and I had taken care of this man in a way that no 19-year-old should have to take care of a partner. But not only did he not give a shit about that, he also expected me to move with him. And I tell him, no, I don't want to live in Florida. I don't want to live by that lake in the middle of fucking nowhere. I have aspirations. I have things I'm working towards. My family's here. My friends are here. I'm not moving. You are welcome to move, but I'm not going to do it. And he's really pissed at me over this. So he decides he's going to do it no matter what, and he gets a job through Connor's dad, who is a general contractor. And he was going to be working in Florida for about 6 months to a year and then come home, or maybe visit during Christmas. And we decided we were going to do the long distance thing, but internally I was thinking, I'm like, I don't even know if I want to be involved in the chaos that was our relationship. So me and his mom drive him to the airport. I'm crying, I'm sad, I'm just like, what the fuck, I'm angry, you know. We drop him off, and then I get home and feel immediate relief. Like, oh my God, he's finally gone. It had just been this massive burden on my life, and I don't even think until that moment I realized how relieved I was for him to be gone. So a few days pass, and I'm not really communicating all that much because I'm just giving myself space and trying to figure out how I feel. But a few days in, freaking Ryan sends me this video of him and Connor in a mobile home that is on fire while they are simultaneously demolishing walls. And it turns out that this job that he got through Connor's dad was illegally destroying his properties so that he could build on top of them without getting like the proper license to do so. I'm like, what in the flying fuck? Like, you left to Florida on a whim to commit arson? Are you kidding me? Like, this is better than what you've got going on here. Like, I know Smashburger doesn't fucking slap, but you want to be a felon now? Like for part 2.
I'm going to tell you about a time I was dating a man and I caught him out in a very peculiar lie. And I want you to tell me if you think the lie is kind of understandable and actually makes him sort of cute, or whether you think it actually makes him quite calculated and is fucking weird, because I wasn't sure at the time. So I'd been seeing this man for maybe like 2 months on and off. It was quite casual. I met him on Hinge. My opinions of him was that he was really confident and like smart, and he was sort of rich as well. But we were getting quite comfortable with each other, so we was having a bit of a chat, and he was telling me a story about when he was dating this girl a few years ago. He was like, yeah, so I really fancied this girl. Actually, he was Swedish, so I don't know why I'm saying it like that. I can't be asked to impersonate him. I'm just going to tell you what he said. So basically, he came up with this crazy elaborate plan. He told the girl to meet him for the date at this particular restaurant that he knew was actually shut down. So he knew she was going to arrive at the restaurant and text him and be like, oh, the restaurant's shut. Because what he had actually done the day before the date is gone to this other restaurant which was more bougie, like a 5-star hotel restaurant that he knew he would never get a table at if he had just called up. So he fully went in there knowing that he could probably manipulate the restaurant manager into giving him a table if he told him it was to impress a girl for a first date. So when he first asked the restaurant manager for his table, the restaurant manager was like, no, fuck off. But then he was like, oh man, like it's to impress a girl. And the manager was like, okay, I get it, man. Like, I'll give you a table. So on the day of the date, when the girl arrived to the first restaurant that was actually shut down and texted him, he pretended like he didn't know that. He was like, oh my God, like so sorry. Do you know what? I'll just take you to like my regular restaurant that I go to every day. Like it's nothing special. Like pretended that it wasn't a big deal, like this place he was taking her to. And then they got there and the man had given him like one of the best seats in the house. And he was like, oh yeah, like I come here every week. Like it's just like casual work thing. And so obviously she thought he was really sick and rich and stuff, which he wasn't at the time, but he was trying to make her feel like that. So anyway, he had told me this whole story and then something clicked in my head. I was like, oh my God. Because for our first date, me and him, something similar happened. For our first date, he told me to meet him at this one restaurant in Oxford Circus called Mr. Fogg's, which was really nice. But when I arrived there, he texted me and was like, oh, like my work meeting's running late in this restaurant a few doors down from Mr. Fogg's. So do you just want to come and meet me here instead? And I texted him back saying, no, like you told me to meet you here, so you can come here. I'll wait. And I remember he was quite taken aback by that over text. He was like, are you sure you don't want to come to this bar? It's actually nicer. And I was like, no. I'm not chasing you up and down the road for a date. You can come here. So he did eventually come to Mr. Fogg's. But then about half an hour into the date, we only had one drink there. And he was like, do you want to go like to another bar? I'll take you to the bar I was just at because it is actually nice. And I was like, okay then. Like, why did you tell me to meet you at Mr. Fogg's then? So anyway, we went to that bar and it was like the bougiest bar of all time. So expensive. I was impressed by it. Do you know what I mean? Do you get it? So obviously now he's told me this story about this other girl, it's all making sense in my head. Like, he intentionally lied and told me to meet him at Mr. Fogg's knowing that he was actually taking me somewhere else that was even bougier to impress me. But he wanted to make it seem really casual, like he would like just run over a work meeting a bit late there. So, do you know what I mean? Isn't that very weird? I said it to him there and then. I was like, so, wait a minute. Do you remember you did the same thing to me? I've just caught you out. And he was like, no, like, that wasn't it. Like, this girl he was telling me about was like, that was like years ago. And he was still using the same tricks, like years on me and probably a million different other girls. Now, some people would just think that was funny, but I thought it was very weird and telling about his character.
Egyptian man. Here's the story of how I almost got engaged to an Egyptian guy, and because of that experience, I will never go for an Egyptian man again. So let me set the scene. September 2021, one of my best friends offs himself. Obviously, I'm hella depressed. One of my photographers was like, hey, I want to do a photo shoot in Florida. Let's go. So the way I left that funeral and hopped on a plane. 2 days into this work vacation, my photographer tried to me. So I kind of just started doing my own thing. I didn't want to be around him. And that's when I met that. And it's hilarious that y'all have the same name and you're asking me about Egyptian men a year later. But I digress. Me and this guy were super into each other. I came to Florida multiple times to spend time with him, got him nice stuff for his birthday. We had a super good connection. So he was working temporarily in Florida and he was going to go back to Egypt to finish out his degree. And he told me when he came back to the States and like the next summer that he would come back with a ring and we would get married. So we go to the airport together. I leave to Chicago and then he goes to visit some family in California before he goes to Egypt. And who just happens to be in that same area that he's in? His ex. And I already kind of sensed some funny stuff was going down, right? So I was like, yo, she likes you. And he was like, no, she's just a friend. She's just that and that. And I'm like, dude, I speak girl and I know what she's trying to do. This mofo gaslit me and then broke up with me because he admitted to me that he had feelings for her. And he told me he regretted everything with me and he had no feelings towards me. Obviously, I was super heartbroken, so I deleted his number, blocked him from every single type of social media possible. And then I get a phone call from an email, a mysterious email from Egypt, and it's in. Go to part 2 if you want to know what.
Women. What's something you've only just discovered about men? About 3 months ago, I was just laying in bed when my brother barges in and sits down at the foot of my bed. I don't spend much time around my parents' house, nor do I see him very often. But as soon as he walked in, I was able to tell by the glow in his confidence and the smile on his face that he was extremely happy. Naturally, I asked him what was up, what he wanted. He smiled and asked, "What do you think about my smile?" I shrugged and told him that I thought it was fine. "Well," he said with a smirk, "this cute girl in my class told me that she thought I had a very attractive smile." I didn't really understand why he was so excited. I thought to myself, big whoop, I hear that all the time. But that got me thinking a little bit. Later that night, I asked him, "When was the last time you were complimented besides today or from family?" There was a little bit of a hesitant pause before he admitted he genuinely couldn't remember the last time he'd received a compliment from someone other than our mom or aunt. This got me thinking more, so I asked my male cousins and friends, etc. Most of the responses were the same. Either I don't know or I can't remember. Still to this day, he still talks about that one classmate complimented his smile, and it melts my heart how happy it's made him and how much it's boosted his confidence.
Hello, I just want to talk about men for a second because I've just had like a mad flashback from my childhood that I need to just share. When I was like 13, 14, 15, 16, like growing up in that kind of area, I was part of like an alternate friend group who was like a bunch of like young girls and like older men that were hanging out together, right? Very textbook. Cut to me being 15 years old, lying to my parents about where I am, going to a gig and having to stay at a boy's house afterwards who was maybe like 19, 20 years old or something like that. Far too old for a 15-year-old anyway. He's trying to get me to like sleep with him or whatever, and like I'm trying to be polite and be like, oh, like haha, like just making excuses, right? And I said to him, one of the excuses was, oh no, I don't feel comfortable doing it during the day, I only want to do it at night, that's what makes me comfortable. Tell me why this man googled when it would technically be night, set an alarm so that the minute it technically became nighttime, he could try and sleep with me, and I had no excuses.
I really play, bust it down, you know I'm on the way, yeah. Double B's, glasses see through double C's. Cartier frames, look at me, yeah. Making my shots like I lead. I'm on my way up, I feel blessed. Triple sec, running stars all on my head. Way up to the ceiling fan, cash stacks, free bands. I can never see the end. Love me, baby, don't pretend. I know that you just a friend.
On my toes. Said
So I'm sitting in the clothing optional jacuzzi at my gym, and I'm sitting directly across from this guy that I've seen a bunch of times before, is super fucking gorgeous, but always gives me like really straight bro vibes. But as we were sitting there, I noticed that every time I opened my eyes, this guy was like looking at me. Like he was looking at me a few too many times for a straight guy. So I theorized that maybe he wasn't straight, and I decided to test this theory. So I sat up on the side of the jacuzzi, making everything very visible to him. I noticed that he glanced a couple times, and then I looked over here and like out of the corner of my eye, I could tell that he was staring at it. So it became clear to me that this guy was not actually fully straight. So I sat back down in the jacuzzi and like bumped my knee up against his. He moved his knee away at first, so I waited a few seconds and pushed my knee up against his again. And this time he didn't move his knee. So now we're both sitting in the jacuzzi with our legs resting against each other. And I decided to take it a step further, so I reached down and grabbed his leg and started pulling it up to me, and he pulled his leg back. And then like a couple minutes later, he got up and left the jacuzzi and smiled at me. I waited for him to shower, and then he went back to get changed, so I followed him to the changing area to get my razor, which I didn't even shave. I just wanted to talk to him. And there was somebody on the other side of the changing room, so I couldn't ask him what I wanted to ask him, like, out loud. So I went up to him and I was like... And he was like... No. And I was like... And he was like... So he was a little gay. And then I whispered to him, like, hey man, do you want to get my number? And we could, like, just have a little casual fun sometime. Like, maybe just our hands, no big deal. And he was like, oh, thanks, like... I totally would be down, but I have a girlfriend, so I can't. And I was like, okay, no big deal. Like, hope I didn't cross any boundaries. And he was like, no, you're all good. And I started walking away, and he was like, but I'll see you in the jacuzzi again next time. And obviously, I was down for that. But a few weeks went by, and I never saw this guy. Like, I think our regular gym times must just be, like, different from each other, because I kept looking for him, and I never saw him. I think I did, like, a 3-part story about it here. And then literally, like, 2 days later... I get a notification on Grindr. And it's this fucking guy from the gym. And he's like, hey man, I don't know if you remember me, but I think you asked for my phone number in the locker room a few weeks ago. And I was like, oh yeah, like, were you the guy that was staring at my junk in the jacuzzi? He was like, haha, yeah, that was me. And then he went on to say that he hasn't stopped thinking about that since, that he stopped wearing shorts in the jacuzzi every time he goes now, and that he keeps looking for me in the locker room and hasn't seen me. I found that quite intriguing. So I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, do you want to meet up in the locker room again sometime, or maybe just come over to my house? He seemed a little bit nervous about coming over, but he said he was down to meet up in the locker room again. And then the next morning I texted him and I was like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. Like, do you want to come too? He said that he was already there. So I was like, okay, like, do you want me to go do a quick workout and then we can meet in the locker room? And sorry guys, I ran out of time. I promised to not make this one too many parts, but do follow for part 2.